people join a little bit late anyway, so I'm going to start with a little bit of an introduction anyway. So I guess first and foremost, thank you very much for joining this morning and welcome to the webinar entitled The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Training Organizations. I'll just introduce myself first of all. So my name's Andrew. I'm head of sales at a company called accessplanit. I'll tell you a little bit more about us later on. There's a couple of my details at the bottom there, phone number and email, but again, I'll reiterate those later on if you have any follow-up questions. So just before we get started with the webinar today, I'd just like to go through a little bit of housekeeping with everyone here. So first of all, because it's a webinar, everyone is listening in sort of a muted mode, so I can't hear you. So that's the first thing to stress here. So anything you say, unfortunately, I can't hear. So I'm not ignoring you if you have any questions. Best thing to do if you do have questions as we go through today, which I'm sure you will, is to use the question box, which is in your GoToWebinar panel. So that will be on your screen. Usually it starts in the top right of your screen. It's a little panel, and what you're able to do through there is ask questions as we go through. So what I'll do, I've got a colleague who'll be collating some of those questions and as we go through today and passing them on to me. And at the end, I'll reserve some time for a bit of a Q&A session anyway. So again, just to reiterate, any questions, put them in the panel and we'll deal with them from there. Other than that, the webinar itself, I've got sort of allocated around half an hour. We'll see how we get on. We'll cover the actual content of the webinar. We'll cover 20-25 minutes plus time for questions at the end as well. And obviously beyond that, if there's further discussion, we'll see how long people can stay. So I think that's fine. That's a little bit of housekeeping. Let's get straight into the webinar itself. And I guess first of all, sort of establishing, who are we? Why are we talking about highly effective training organizations? And really it's because over the last 10 to 15 years as a company, we've been speaking to and dealing with training companies on a day-to-day basis. Hundreds, if not thousands, we've probably spoken to over that period of time. And what you start to see are patterns on where perhaps where training companies are doing things better than others. And you start to look at what their habits are. And we thought it'd be a useful webinar really to share with you that sort of 7 habits that we think the best training companies are doing. And I guess, why do you want to be best? Well, you want to be the best in your field. You want to be the leader. You want to be, the most forward-thinking, the top operators. So what we can do, hopefully you can take away from the webinar today, is that it will give you a bit of food for thought about are these habits for your training organization? Are these the things that you currently do? What room is there for improvement? And I think that's important. We'll talk later about improvement because, again, it's vital for any organization, really regardless of sector, that you're always looking to improve. So again, let's talk about that a little bit later on. Let's talk about the 7 habits themselves then. Okay, so I'll just introduce you to these. I'll just take you through these briefly. We are going to go into these in more detail anyway. So we've got process-driven, automation, insight, innovation, communication, customer experience, and continuous improvement. With these, as I say, we'll look through these. Some of these you might not think in themselves are sort of a habit as such or per se, is automation a habit? Well, I think what we're talking about today is looking at introducing automation wherever you can as a habit. Again, is customer experience. I guess that's the thing. But again, improving, enhancing, offering the best customer experience as your habit. So these are when we talk about these being habits, again, I'll sort of put a bit of meat on the bones as we go through these. So what's our starting point? I'll start with process-driven and processes. I'll come back to what's on your screen in a moment. By all means, have a read through that as I talk. But I guess processes are something very close to our heart as a business ourselves. I mean, as a company, what we did a few years ago as we were going through a period of growth is we underwent ISO 9001 accreditation. I'm not sure how familiar some of those on the call today are with sort of these standards, but really what that is that's a standard which says that we have processes and procedures in place across our business. And the reason we did it wasn't not to get a badge of honor or anything like that. It was really because we recognized as an organization there were certain areas, perhaps as a company, we could do better. Perhaps things were falling through the cracks. Where can improvements be made? And really the starting point for that is to sit down every area across your business and start to work out, start to finish, what are processes? So what are your, sales processes, your marketing processes, your customer experience processes, if you like. And then to look at where you can introduce improvements along the way. I guess one of the good things about introducing sort of clear process and procedures is it leads to consistency. So what happens is if you can analyze things and then introduce a clear process, it means that all staff are doing things in a uniform and consistent manner. That's great, because staff, know what's expected of them. And also, I guess the customers, it's really important because then they are getting, the same level of service, hopefully a high level of service each time with you. So again, one interaction with you to another, something isn't being done a different way, and they can expect that same consistent process. So what I've got on my screen here is what I would sort of describe as a sort of fairly typical sort of process you'd see that a training company might have. I've mapped it out, everything from making an inquiry through to the booking being received, through to sort of course delivery and post-course actions. Hopefully a lot of this stuff will look quite familiar to you. I'm not going to mention or talk you through all of those. I'm sure you can read that on your screen there. So what you might start to do is put together your own sort of map of things like this. And what happens, from start to finish? What do we currently do? Again, maybe aspirationally, what would we like to do? But map out that process. And then what you can start to do for each of these areas, you can even then sort of start to zoom in with some of these and say, well, how can we then start to standardize or even automate or make things more efficient across here? So even if we look at the first one here, so website inquiry received, email response sent, how is that currently done? Is that something that is automated? Is it something manually, someone then pulls up that inquiry, or is it a phone call? If so, is there an SLA internally in place for that? So do you have to respond within X amount of hours to those inquiries? These are the sort of things, again, you can start to build in your processes. And what I like to do is talk about automation a bit, and again, we'll come onto that in a moment, because actually if you look at this sort of process here, by mapping it out, you might think, well, actually, is there a way to automate that initial inquiry email? Is there a way to automate sending out booking confirmations, raising invoices, materials, etc. And actually what I've done here, I've looked at this map and I've worked out all the steps highlighted here in red are things we can either automate or introduce efficiencies for. Okay, and that is, as a business, that's what we do at accessplanit. We help customers achieve these efficiencies. I'll tell you a little bit more about how we do that later on, perhaps as we talk about automation on the next step. So again, that first thing is start to look at your process, start to map them out. Are there areas where things aren't being done in a consistent manner, and where can you make improvements or efficiencies? As simple as that, really. So that's a good starting point, and I think that's a habit really to get into. I should say that is an ongoing thing. As a business, now we've been through this process, we don't stand on our laurels. It is a case of keep looking at those processes. Where can further improvements be made? But the next thing we'll talk about then is automation. Hopefully, actually, this is fairly straightforward, actually. Okay, so when we talk about automation, and again, we're talking about the habit here of introduction of automation. As a training business, there's probably lots of areas where it might be you do things manually that you can automate. And I guess, why do you want to automate things? You might think in itself that's a bit of an odd question. You might think, well, of course we want to automate where we can. I guess that there's more than one reason. Of course, time and hence money, I suppose, is probably the reason most people think of. So if we can get a process or being done automatically, that's something someone doesn't have to do. But of course, also the other thing is probably reducing error. Every time we find, we speak to training companies and they are, I guess, rekeying data from A to B. It might be sort of entering things on 3 or 4 different spreadsheets. Each of those sort of manual interactions is an opportunity for something to go wrong, unfortunately. So again, automation can also be very much about reducing errors, reducing rekeying and things like that. Okay, so in terms of training companies, as we said on the previous slide, what is it you can automate? And again, what we've done actually is we've built within a page on our website a very useful tool where you can look at different areas you can start to potentially automate. So what we ask is actually, it's a really nice exercise this, that you go away and you look at how much time you spend doing certain activities that we think we can help you automate as a business. And then what you do is collate it up. So start to work out, right, we process X amount of bookings per week. It takes 10 minutes to do this, 5 minutes to do this. Start to add that up, put your hours in basically this calculator we've got. And what you're able to do is start to quantify those savings in terms of time and even money. So what I've done is I've gone through and filled this in based on If you processed 100 bookings per week, okay, you probably, again, and if you were doing all of these sort of things manually, I've plugged those figures in. I think it works out about 83 hours a week, probably manual processes. And then what I've plugged that in, I've plugged that into our calculator, and what you can start to see is a time saving. And actually, you can see that's very big. You know, we're over 3 years. You can say 14,000 hours. That's a lot of time. Again, you can see each year you can save more. You might think, why is that? Actually, again, using our people use our tools. The more you use them, the better you use and the more efficiencies you gain. And also, we're forever introducing new ways to help you get more efficient as well, which is important. So what does that quantify into in terms of money? Well, of course, that depends how much you pay staff. But, you know, if you were even using a very sort of low rate of £10 an hour, because it isn't what you pay someone per hour that it actually costs the business, as you know, some of you will know, you know, that's taking nothing into account for national insurance contributions and obviously the cost of computers and offices and desks and so on. So, you know, in real terms, cost of employing people is often double or more actually what their sort of base salary is. So, I mean, I've gone on a very sort of towards the low end here. But I mean, even if you were looking at, sort of £10 an hour, again, you can see that potentially, you know, there's a huge saving to be made each year by automating these processes. And again, that's exactly what our software is designed to do. So we can see total ROI there for over £140,000, which is pretty good because, I mean, I've used an example of 100 bookings per week. That's a reasonable number, but it's by no means, you know, vast. Of course, there's lots of people who take far more bookings than that. They would get far more return by automating. The other thing I'll put on here actually is a little link in the bottom corner there. That is an address you can go to. By all means, jot that down. So it's just to our website address /ROI-calculator. Have a go yourselves. Plug in your own figures and start to have a look at what you think you could save. Okay, and again, I think that's a really nice thing you can do. Okay, so what's the next thing I want to talk to you about? The next habit. And it's insight. And again, I think, you know, when we talk about habit, it's almost the use of insight, I think, that should become the habit. So when we talk about insight, I'll come back to what's on your screen here in a moment, which is a nice example of, again, how we can help with insight. But when we talk about it, it's, again, from experience, really, it's amazing how often we speak with training companies. And they don't seem to easily be able to tell what I would sort of consider fairly basic information. So it might be things like, I might ask, you know, a training business, what's your most profitable course? You know, what are you spending most of your money on? What's costing you the most? You know, can you tell me sort of upcoming fill rates for courses? Can you tell me who your most profitable customers are? You know, all things like that. And it would probably amaze some of you actually on the call here to know that a lot of companies, you know, even MDs or training directors or people like that, they can't tell me those figures. And I just think, well, these are really crucial bits of information, because how can you improve? And really, again, that's the key here. Insight leads to improvement. Because of course, you know, if you find out you're running certain courses, you know, massively sort of under their fill rates every time you run them, you know, should you be putting those on each time? You know, the resource associated with that, could that be allocated elsewhere? I guess, you know, sometimes when we talk about insight, it's almost, there can be some serious repercussions in some industries for lack of insight, if you like. So any industry where you need to re-qualify certain training courses, you know, I guess if you were to work in a hospital or something like that, if you aren't able to identify which members of staff or which people have got, you know, training that is expired or due for re-qualification, you know, there's some huge repercussions associated with that. And you now and again you do see news articles about where there's been sort of huge fines and things like that. So again, you know, things like that, which I'd class as fairly basic. Again, you know, there's companies out there who really are in the sort of industries where they should have that information at their fingertips and they don't. So again, what we're talking about is insight. So again, on your screen here, what you will see are some just sort of a rolling example of some sort of dashboard reports. And again, that's something we can help organizations with. We can help you with reporting. Again, what we're seeing here is a dashboard, which is one of the nice things about this is you can actually choose what information you want to see. On your dashboard, you can, different users can have different information. You can report on any modules within the system. So it can be, you know, 3 types there: statistics, sales information, financial information. And it's very easy to get to and report on. We can also actually help with things like automatic email reports. So, you know, again, we're realistic. Not everyone uses all the software available within their business, but, you know, so it might be key stakeholders, particularly if you're in large organizations with CEOs and things like that, where they're not really going to engage with the sort of the day-to-day applications. Why not set up a report that goes to them on a weekly or monthly basis with the information they want? And again, we can help you automate that sort of thing. So again, insight, I think, is really important, actually. Okay. So next thing I want to talk about is innovation, actually, here. So I think, actually, let's step outside of the training industry a little bit here to talk about some examples of innovation elsewhere. And I guess, you know, maybe a nice example of innovation, but let's actually start with an example of someone who wouldn't innovate, and it cost them a business, a pretty large business. So that example I'm going to go for is Blockbuster here. And I'm sure a lot of you will remember the going to Blockbuster on a Saturday night to pick up the latest film that was out for rent. And it was something that worked very well for quite a long time, as long as you got your videos back in time and didn't pay the late fees. So, you know, it became a bit of a sort of a tradition for a lot of families that they would go a weekend and pick up a new release, something like that. Now, obviously, what's happened, it seems so antiquated now. It was only a few years ago, but obviously companies like Netflix came along, and the goalpost changed a huge amount. Originally, it started that you could actually, it wasn't, you know, obviously now we're very familiar with online content. Actually, the starting point where Blockbuster went wrong was they didn't recognize that actually home delivery and things like that were useful. Again, you might remember with More 4 Film 4, again, that was another service where you could post off and get DVDs to your house and things like that. And again, they got rid of late fees and stuff like that. Now, Blockbuster were very rigid. They didn't introduce that sort of thing. They didn't want to deliver to your door. And then obviously subsequent to that, the next stage was, of course, content all started to go online and people didn't need to go out at all anymore. Now, Blockbuster had opportunities along the way when they're a very large organization to enter that sort of market. They did have an opportunity actually to buy Netflix for I think $50 million back in the year 2000, which considering what it's worth now would have been a real bargain, I think, at that point. But they didn't, and they didn't innovate. They stood still when the way people were consuming, obviously films in this case, changed a great deal. So what happened? Eventually, in 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. So again, in fact, their lack of innovation, their inability or unwillingness, if you like, to innovate actually cost the whole company and obviously a lot of people their jobs. So it's a really, I guess that's quite a severe example. If we talk about a nice example of a company that innovates, you might not, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, of course, McDonald's, but you can't help but admire them in some ways. Again, they innovate a lot, and again, you know, it's a great business model. Probably these days because of increased competition and perhaps people are so many other options out there. You would have thought actually it might have been this is the sort of company that could suffer, you know, and they haven't, you know, in some ways, the model has stayed very similar. You know, McDonald's opened in different locations over the years, but the innovation again is in different ways. And where they're very good actually is they listen to customer feedback. So there are things, you know, that came off McDonald's menus that went back on, things like the Filet-O-Fish Happy Meal and Egg McMuffins, apple pies. At one point or another, these sort of things went off the menu. People said, no, we want them back on. People have asked for seasonal menus, they've gone back on. Certainly in the US, people have asked for all-day breakfast and things like that. Again, they've introduced that, and that's apparently they're selling really well, making them a lot of money. That's what people have asked for. They're happy to innovate, but they do a lot of it based on customer feedback. Unfortunately, in the UK, we still have to go, I think, before 10:30 for our breakfast if we want it there. But they are continually adapting and reviewing their menus, and I think that's really important. And they're doing that based on customer feedback, and I think that's very important. So I guess, you know, there's a couple of examples of a company that's done it very badly and a company that continues to innovate very well. What does it mean to you? Well, training is a highly competitive industry, and I think innovation is crucial. So there's probably two ways you can do it, and we tend to, probably one way is sort of horizon scanning, where you're constantly seeking sort of new opportunities and things like that. And again, that's where you might get sort of thought leaders and things like that. But probably the easier way to innovate in many ways is just by listening to your customer feedback, asking your customers, again, what it is they want. And again, we can help with that. We can help you introduce, sort of automated surveys and things like that, where you can continually get feedback from customers. And again, I think for the reasons we talked about there, it's very important. So again, I think as a side note, as a business, that's very much how we work. We like to innovate. We want our product to always be better than others on the market. But that isn't a case of we just come up with sort of weird and wonderful ideas of our own. We are asking our customers to tell us what they want. In fact, our product development is driven almost exclusively by customer feedback. We've got product suggestions area where that is really what we mine for, what we then introduce into the product. And again, I think that's really important. So again, innovation. Communication then is the next one that I'd like to talk through here. And I think when we talk about communication here, I'm not as much really talking about communication with your customers. We're talking about internal communication, I think, in many ways here. So I think good communication generally equals a good culture. Why? Well, employees become engaged when they are kept well informed about what's going on. And actually, there's a little stat there you'll see on your screen from a McKinsey report that says connected employees improve their productivity improves by up to 25%. And again, that can be through use of technology, so better ways to communicate internally. So I think, putting this into context for yourselves, are all your employees aware of what's happening within your business? And it might be things that you might then start to, again, we can even help with. So things like ensuring that people are kept in the loop when certain things happen. So let's do an example. Do internal staff always know when a course is approaching its fill rate? Perhaps it hits 80% or something like that. Because what you want to be doing there is then being proactive in looking, can you add another trainer to that course to offer, to offer more spaces or move it to a larger venue, things like that. Get the sales and marketing team to align with you. Can we promote extra places on there? And again, you can only do that if you're understanding what's going on and using, again, technology there. So again, we can use set up email alerts and things like that that will go out to members of the team. It could even be using email reports or dashboards, again, some of the things we've talked about already, but just to ensure they are kept, informed of what's happening. It could be that, a sales employee updates the status of a course or updates the status on a customer. And again, that triggers a communication to another part of the business to tell them what they need to do next. And again, I think that's really important. It's also then that's tying up, across the business from one area to the next, ensuring that the process, again, doesn't fall down. So again, it's keeping everyone really in the loop. So I think a united front's only a good thing really for customers, particularly, I guess, larger or global businesses where tasks can get lost, where departments departments don't really speak to each other very well. So again, the larger an organization is, probably the more important, I think, communication is in some ways as well. So as the poet John Donne once wrote, no man's an island, and I guess the same goes for an organization's departments as well. So again, communication is really important. So I think the other thing is make good communication a habit to mention here. So setting aside time every day or week to study it, use these notifications, use these tools to help with communication. But also, I think what we talked about and what we talked about earlier is use insight as well. So again, it really links together. A lot of these habits do really, one doesn't happen without the other. So next one I want to cover is customer experience. So on here, again, I think when we're talking about a habit here, we're talking about reviewing and improving customer experience continually as well. Again, I'll let you read that quote there on the screen in front of you there. So it's understanding sort of how a company delivers. So I think successful businesses have an appetite for change and the desire to change and improve their customer experience. And often that's an understanding the gap between the needs and wants of customers and what they actually experience. Again, a lot of companies, I think, perhaps naive in terms of they think they offer one thing, but if you ask the customer what they're getting, it's very different. So it's that sort of analysis. I think also you need to know which points in the customer experience have the greatest impact. So what are the touch points, there that really, are really opportunities to have good experience, or I guess the other side, that is bad experience, but you want to remove that as much as possible. Also, it's, providing your staff with the capabilities to support the customer experience they want to provide. So your members of the team can only offer customer experience up to a certain level based on the tools or information they're given. So again, this is really important. So I think some of this relates quite nicely to the mapping your process we talked about at the start of this webinar. Try mapping your processes from the perspective of one of your customers. What are your customers' touch points with you? What do you think the experience is currently like? What would you like it to be? And again, be really honest with yourselves about that. Perhaps it's not as good as you think it is. Hopefully it is. But again, there's usually room to improve. And I think when we talk about customer experience, again, how can we help you with customer experience or help you deliver better customer experience? There's some quick wins I can talk about here. It might be introducing real-time 24/7 course booking and payment with instant booking messages. So even at midnight, people can book onto courses. They can only book courses that still got availability, things like that. Standardizing professional responses across every part of the business, so giving you a professional image. People will get the same messages, or your customer will get the same messages at the right time, and they'll be consistent and standard. Knowing your customers, offering personalized and targeted offers and course suggestions based on their history, relevant interests. Again, not spamming them. Not everyone's interested in everything, but yeah, sure. If they've done a few courses with you or some of their employees have, by all means, pick at that. Be very choosy about what sort of marketing messages you want to send. Again, these are things we can help. I guess also ensuring that all the relevant admin tasks are completed on time to ensure customers are not left waiting. That's really important. I think task management is again a huge part of what we can help you with as well. So again, you're ensuring that customers are getting sort of a timely service as well as a very professional one. So customer experience, again, I think that's hopefully fairly self-explanatory in some ways. Continuous improvement is the last one, and actually it's really where we talk about this. The final habit will become part of your business. Continuous improvement will become part of your business if you are already introducing the other habits. You can't help but improve if you are continually reviewing all these other areas we've discussed so far. And really, as long as you are forever, looking at these different areas and looking, how can I do that better? How can I improve? Then you will improve. And as a business, you won't stand still. You won't be the blockbuster that we talked about who says, well, I've always done it that way. There's nothing worse than hearing someone say, well, I've always done it this way, because that doesn't mean that is the right way of doing it. Doing something for 10 years the same way doesn't mean it's the best way of doing it. So again, make sure that you're always, always moving, because that your competitors, the competitors you need to worry about anyway, they won't be standing still. So again, as a business, we do exactly this. We need to continually analyze all areas of our business. How can we improve our products, our support, our implementation services, our sales and marketing functions? That is, as a business, we're very focused around doing those sort of things and trying to improve continually, which is, I think, really important. So they're the habits I wanted to talk through. Just quickly onto a little bit about us. So, for those of you who perhaps joined a little bit late, we are accessplanit. We're a software company, and we make, we've got what we call our training success platform. Basically, it's software that helps people run and manage their training courses. In a lot of cases, we talk about it saving people money. It isn't always about money. It's about time and being able to do better things with that time. But again, there's some examples on there of some organizations who've helped save a lot of money. And again, often we can do that for your business. When we go back to that ROI calculator, we looked at earlier, again, that's a really good way to start looking at if we can save you money, or of course we can speak to you and help you with that. We've got there's loads more information on our website, which is www.accessplanit.com. I'll put that up on the next slide in just a second. So again, you can find out more about us there, of course. And if you'd like to talk to us, then we love to talk to training companies. And again, we love to help training businesses. I genuinely believe, even if you don't, even if our software isn't the right fit, I bet if you have a 10-minute conversation with one of our team, we can give you some tips that will help you with as a training business anyway. And there's a lot of resource on our website that I think most training companies will get something out of. So by all means, have a look at that. So yeah, if you look on the screen now, what you've got is a phone number on there. That's our main number. If you want to email me directly, you can do. So it's just andrew@accessplanit.com. That's just my email there. Or there's an inquiries at accessplanit.com that come through sort of more generally, and our web address on there as well. So what I would like to do is hand over for some questions here. I'll just wait. My colleague is going to hand me some over. So we've got a couple of bits that have come through. Okay, so let me just have a look down the list here. Bear me a moment. Okay, so first question I've got here is on, okay, so it's about process mapping. Okay, so that's an interesting one. And and how you can go about that. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one actually, mapping processes. It is something we can help you with actually if you want as well. What we can offer is something we call a discovery workshop, where as a training business, if you want us to map your processes, okay, and have a look at you know, what areas we think we can help you automate, we can do that. So what we'll do, we could either do that through a web session, or we can actually come in and we can then start to look at all the areas as a business, all your processes. So it's everything from inquiries, bookings, and managing trainers and venues of equipment. It might be producing proposals, because that's another question we'll come into in a moment. You know, all those areas we can look at and we can say, yes, we can save you time in these areas. So if you want help with stuff like that, again, we can do that. We can be in a position to help you get started with that. And there's also, again, some tools on our website to start doing that. Someone else asked about proposal making and production, how you can automate it. Actually, within our software, what you can do is you can build your own templates up. So you could build up, theoretically, something like a proposal template, which you can then use our sort of mail merge functions to then produce that into a document or into an email. So it would mail merge in details from the opportunity, if you like, in the back end of the system. Obviously, we'd need to look at what's in your proposals currently to check all the fields, map up and exactly how it works. But yeah, they're the sort of things we can help with. We can, again, if you're entering into a system, you know, details around the quotation, or you know, some training you're going to deliver, again, rather than you'd have to rekey that into a proposal, we can then take some of that information and mail merge it out. So yeah, that's sort of thing we can help. We could either put that into one of our email templates, or again, you might even be able to automate that fully by updating a sales stage in the CRM to proposal issued that actually could send some sort of proposal out. So again, you can either do, there's a few more areas to discuss. So again, that's the sort of area we can usually help with, but we like to look at that in a bit more detail. So it's a nice question there. Someone again has asked very specifically about automating invoicing, which probably was in our process there as well, and how you do that. Yeah, I mean, actually it's worth mentioning we integrate with a number of different finance systems, including Sage and Xero, which are probably the two most common ones we come across. And yeah, what we can do is automate invoice production. So when you take a booking, or when you run our invoice generator, depending on how you invoice, that can actually raise an invoice, you know, any associated transactions to that, and they can all push through to Sage or Xero. So again, we can automate that. And I think actually training companies, that's one of the areas that nearly every training company do manually if they haven't got a tool like ours in place. Finally, someone's asked about customer communications, and, you know, is there any best practice or something like that? Yeah, I mean, that's quite an interesting one. I guess there isn't a hard and fast rule about what you should send out to customers when. I mean, I think I alluded to earlier, you know, you don't want to sort of become a spammer or anything like that. What we have got on our website, actually, I think it's in our resource section, is a mapping your communications document, which actually gets people to think about, you know, what communications do you want? Again, very much from the process of looking at sort of the customer journey. So it's a case of, if someone does this, you know, what do they get? What happens next? You know, someone makes a booking, what next? And so on. So again, you know, there's some stuff on our website, or I could direct that to you separately if you like. But I think that's probably it. I've slightly overrun anyway for my time here. So I think let's leave it at that. What I'll do is, everyone will get a follow-up email anyway. If you are interested in finding out more about how we can help you, then please, you know, please let me know. So as I say, number, email address on there, do get in touch, or reply to the follow-up email you'll get anyway. Hopefully you found that useful and you've taken some stuff out of that. As I say, you know, every training business, whether or not we're a good fit for you or a good partner, it doesn't, you know, everything I've said today stands true. You know, these are things that as a training business, I would really recommend you go and try and sort of look at those 7 different areas, or 6 areas. And if you look at those, you will, you know, you will improve, and you will, your business will, you know, hopefully remain or move to, you know, a sort of best in class. So yeah, on that note, thank you very much again for your time today. I hope you found that useful. We will be running some more webinars in due course, and we'll let you know the topics of those. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, I hope to hear from some of you on the webinar today, and find out a bit more about your businesses in due course. So thank you again, and goodbye.